Your car guy here, 2002 Toyota Corolla. What we had was a P0171 code, and the customer had already taken the car to the Toyota dealer to no avail, multiple mechanics, and I'll walk through what they did. P0171 code means that it is running too lean, not enough fuel in the combustion chamber, and so you're getting a lean condition. Now, I'll walk through what the other mechanics did and what some of the times the simple fixes are for a 171 code. So a 171 code can be caused by a vacuum leak. By a vacuum leak, I mean anywhere behind this sensor. If it's sucking air into the intake system, even up where the manifold mounts to the engine, it's pulling air that the sensor doesn't read. The sensor reads the incoming air, and it tells the computer takes that information and tells the fuel system how much fuel to inject. So if you've got a lean condition, it can be that you're not getting as much air across this, therefore it only knows what it reads here in the computer, and it's going to adjust the fuel to that level, meaning it's giving it more air than it thinks it has, and thus it gets less fuel. The opposite would happen if you have a rich condition where it's injecting more fuel because it thinks it has more air than it really does. Now in this case, somebody had already replaced. This is your mass air sensor right here on the side. It's a simple job to replace. The dealer also replaced the oxygen sensor because it's what reads the rich lean condition and tells it that it is, thinking, oh, maybe it's a faulty oxygen sensor. They went through, they actually even removed the cylinder head and did a head gasket, thinking it was a head gasket issue. So they had done all the basics, checked for vacuum leaks, done all the things. But what they missed was fuel pressure. So what we did is we took a fuel pressure gauge, we hooked it up. We hooked the fuel pressure gauge up in this line right here, which comes to the fuel rail, disconnected here. It does take a special adapter kit to put a fuel pressure gauge on these vehicles, and so if you don't have it, you're either gonna have to buy one or borrow one. Now, what fuel pressure should we have? The fuel pressure should be at least 44 psi at startup and running the 44 to 53 at idle with the engine running. So when we would first start, we would get 40 psi, and when I say first start, that means with the engine cold, first start of the day, you'd get 40 psi, which was close to the right pressure. But immediately we noticed the pressure was falling, and falling off fairly rapidly, down into the 20s, which is just not enough fuel pressure. So what's happening is you don't have enough pressure pushing into your injectors for them to push the amount of fuel they're being asked to give, because they just don't have enough fuel coming to them. And so you'll get that lean condition. Now, what's going to cause our low fuel pressure? It can be from a bad injector, it can be from a bad fuel pump, and it could be from a bad pressure regulator or a line that's leaking somewhere in between. We inspected the lines, we know they're not bad, and we found a bunch of junk in the injectors on the inlet side of them. They have a fine mesh screen, and there was some junk in there. We replaced the injectors, still didn't have the fuel pressure we needed, so now it's time to go at the fuel pump. Injectors on this are relatively cheap. You can buy a reman set of injectors that are matched for around $30, not expensive. You can get brand new OE injectors for about $100 for the whole set, and that includes shipping. So not a big deal as far as injectors. Now when it comes to the fuel pump, the fuel pressure regulator, the filter, and the pump are built into one housing. And if you go to replace that entire housing, which is mounted underneath the rear seat, is where you'll get access to replace it. And I'll have another video that shows replacing the fuel pump. But they're all in one housing. Now that complete assembly is very expensive, approximately $1,000 for a new one. You might find it for $600 or $800 as you shop around, but it's not a cheap assembly. However, you can get the parts to go in it relatively cheaply. The fuel pressure regulator, the actual pump itself, and the built-in filter, and then you just got to rebuild that assembly. Put in the new fuel pump, filter assembly, and the reason we saw pressure dropping and we looked at filter assembly is, hey, it shows that maybe the pump's got enough gusto at first, but then as sediment fills up the filter, it loses fuel pressure. Another option there is that the pump itself is weak, and so when it's cold and first starts running, it would build pressure, but then as it got warm and it built some resistance in the pump, it just simply couldn't pump enough fuel. And we saw to where after the car was warmed up, the fuel pressure would almost not build at all. It wouldn't want to restart. It would take forever to restart to get enough fuel pressure to the injectors to start. So we went ahead, we replaced the fuel pump assembly, and then we checked our pressures. We were right in the range that's specified, and thus didn't have any issues. We were able to test drive it, clear our codes. Our power came back, drivability came back, and we no longer had the lean code. So if you've been frustrated with a P0171 code and you haven't checked your fuel pressure, I recommend it. I wouldn't say just go buy the parts and put them on. Check your fuel pressure, make sure you're in that recommended above 44 PSI at least, and you should have your answer as to if that is your issue. This is your car guy. Thanks for watching. Please like and share, and please subscribe to our videos. We're trying to grow this channel, trying to help people out, and you know, as it is, I don't make any money off of YouTube, but I'd like to. So please help me out. Like and share our videos, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.